How are you today? So, Michael was telling the story of his daughter, Allison, and like Allison, my son Alex was also working for a bank one summer as a college intern, reconciling all this information, and it was dawning on me that our first line of defense to thwart the next financial meltdown is on the backs of these, teenagers. I was horrified. So digital labor sounds like a far more sane approach. Glad you enjoyed the performance last night. I was going in with my little cup of popcorn, and somebody was telling me it was a Chicago thing to make sure I mixed all the different types of popcorn in there, so you get a little bit of a taste of everything. And this is our version of the Chicago thing, our lightning talks, where we give you a little taste of the different presentations and our three main themes from MarkLogic 9, and a bonus of a great time saver that comes from our community development group. First up is the tireless Anthony Roach. Anthony is our product manager who's involved with many of the applications that have to do with sharing. And here to talk right now is if you're sharing all that data, you got to really worry about who's looking at it. So, Anthony Roach. Oh, I forgot one of the key things. The lightning talk is a challenge. You don't have your tie on, so maybe you can't do this. But if you've got 7 minutes to get through the performance, and if they do so, we're going to hear this sound. This is new this year, so I've missed that cue of mine. Sorry. But if they don't do it in 7 minutes, they're going to get interrupted with this sound. All right. Think you can do it?
I'm ready.
All right. Ready, set, go.
Centene Healthcare, 950,000 members. OPM, 20,000 FBI employee records. Seagate, all employee W-2s. IRS, 700,000 records. LinkedIn, 6.5 million passwords. Ashley Madison, 25 gigs of cheater data. SoftWallet, 700,000 credit card numbers. We've become so used to these huge numbers and headlines, you might have not noticed that I put some fake news in there. That last one actually did not happen. What's truly alarming is a lot of these breaches are caused by people authorized to be on your network. So we're not always talking about Russian hackers. Sometimes the biggest threat is an employee or a trusted advisor. And despite these threats, the truth is you want and need to share your data. Your data can't thrive when it's hidden in the silo, and if you can't share it safely, your best bet is not to share it at all. I have a personal sharing versus security story. My kids, these are not my kids, by the way. My kids refuse to be photographed for some security reasons. But my kids are old enough to start having play dates, and what could be better than getting together with all your friends and sharing your toys? The problem with this kind of sharing is allowing other people to touch your stuff, and your friends invariably do things with your toys that you definitely did not want them to do. Call these unauthorized uses by authorized users. The typical reaction is to shut down all play dates and go on a toy lockdown. Some games are just not fun, but anything is better than a headless Barbie. We see the same kind of optimism and disappointment with the data lake. Organizations build these huge repositories, connect their silos, and start filling them with data so they can share them. When you study this picture, you start to see the problem. You're not only co-locating your data, but you're concentrating users that used to be relegated to silos. But what are the odds that all these users should be able to see all of the data in their data lake? And just like the kids, you go on lockdown and you don't allow people to access the data lake. So you spent all this time and money building it, and the first thing you do is prevent access. It's the lack of good security that is preventing you from sharing. I haven't figured out how to fix this for my kids yet, but there is a better answer for your data. As the world's best database for integrating from silos, MarkLogic not only provides the means to integrate your data, but gives you the tools that allow you to secure and share it safely. You integrate your data so you can learn from it and gain insights, but you need to share it with tools and analysts so you can find those insights. Let me take you through an example from the world of healthcare. So with MarkLogic, you've created your Customer 360 Data Hub, and you're filling it with data that used to be in silos. This data used to exist in its silo, and each silo managed its own security and governance policies. Now it exists as a single entity. But what are the odds that everybody with access to your Customer 360 should have access to all the parts of these? With MarkLogic's element level security, you can continue to store the data naturally in this single entity, but give people fine-grained control to what you want them to see. So your call center members, they have to see some of your personal information, but not your healthcare record. Their view allows them to see just that. Your doctor obviously needs to see your healthcare, but not your financial information. And that's what they see when they look you up in the system. And like any good business, healthcare providers need to run analytics on their data so they can understand what's happening. This special analytics view allows them to see that while redacting PII. Important thing to note here is all three of these roles are looking at the same document, and it's MarkLogic that's constructing the view based on what they're allowed to see. That's element level security. In today's world of value-based and data-driven care, external organizations like the Healthcare Cost Institute often ask for data from providers so they can aggregate it industry-wide and see trends in the marketplace. It's in your best interest to work with these organizations, but you need to keep your customers' data secure. And in order for it to be useful, you need to mask the data in a way that people can be tracked over time. Leveraging MarkLogic's redaction features, you can mask PII and extract, but do it in a way that referential integrity is maintained. And what about your system admin and DBA? What can they see? In a word, nothing. Having root access to a system does not mean that you should get access to all the data. You don't need to share everything with your IT department. And MarkLogic's encryption features allow DBAs and administrators to do their jobs without getting special waivers. So let's think back to the data lake. You need to share your data. The writing is on the wall, and you can't perceive a future where you're not gaining insights across your organization and sharing your data with those that can make a difference. With MarkLogic, you can make those integration dreams a reality. Unlock the doors, and granular security is maintained. I started by talking about the apparent conflict between sharing and security. But if Barbie was treated right, she would not have to be locked away. But getting from this to this requires a change in thought. Don't make the mistake of thinking that data security is simply a means to prevent unauthorized access. You can do that just as well by preventing anybody from seeing anything. You can think about it as a means to share your data safely. It is data security that enables data sharing, and MarkLogic can enable both for you.
Congratulations. You did it. One of the things that was very fascinating about that is the fact that you can redact, and it's not just putting a little black line over something and saying, oh, no, you can't look at it. You're not even giving people the opportunity to know it was there.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options with redaction. What I did there was do deterministic redaction, which allows you to mask it, but mask it in a way that it's the same all the time. You can create dictionaries if you want to mask it with real names, for example, but you can't trace it back to what it is. There's a lot of different ways that you could do it.
And you'll be giving, colleague Kyle will be giving a workshop tomorrow on security, delving into more of this. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Actually, there's two opportunities to listen to Kyle talk more about this. There's a data security in practice today where you can go and listen, and then there's a full-day workshop tomorrow where you can actually go hands-on and build some of these yourself.
Sounds good. Thanks so very much. So one of the other promises of MarkLogic 9 is to make data management easier. We're building larger and larger clusters on MarkLogic. Here to talk about how you can manage that cluster far more easier is Norm Walsh. He's our lead engineer, has been with MarkLogic for a very long time, helping us write some really great code. Norm.
8 years today, I'm told.
8 years today.
Thank you. Thank you. As Diane said, I'm going to talk about Ops Director, which is a new project coming out in MarkLogic 9. And the idea behind Ops Director is to give you the 360 view of your MarkLogic operations across your enterprise. So we want to make it possible for you to monitor your applications on diverse clusters, analyze their performance, respond to alerts, et cetera. I'm going to do a live demo because I'm that kind of crazy. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what we're showing in the booth out there if you come by later today during the breaks. This is a sort of typical kind of system for a small to medium kind of engagement where you have Ops Director managing 5 clusters in the cloud. You've got a bank customer cluster, a 3-node cluster, maybe running some customer search application, business critical application. You've got a larger trade and asset cluster running some other risk analysis tools. And then you've got some development clusters. You've got some QA clusters. You want to manage them all. You want to know they're all up or all down. You may care more or less about the state of some of them, but you want to have access to all that information. This is a great demo. I will do that demo out there. I have 5 minutes and 52 seconds left. That's not enough time for this demo. So I'm going to do something simpler, which has 4 Docker containers on my laptop, so I don't have to worry about the network going down. It's a MarkLogic cluster managing itself, monitoring itself, and a 3-node cluster, a trade store application, hypothetical trade store application. And the problem with demoing a tool like Ops Director is most things run fine most of the time, and when things are running fine, the demo is very boring. Everything is green. It's like running your regression tests and getting all green lights. It's intellectually satisfying, but there's no adrenaline. So what I've done instead is I have terminated with prejudice one of the machines in this 3-node cluster. And so when we switch over to the Ops Director view, we're going to see some problems. I'm going to point and click my way through and show you how quickly Ops Director allows you to identify what those problems are. I'm not going to try and solve the problem because there isn't time. Once we've identified the problem, I'm going to explore some of the other features of Ops Director sort of briefly until it gets close to time running out. And then I'm going to say goodbye because I don't want that nasty buzzer sound. So let's do the demo. Here we go. I'm going to log in. Hello. Thank you. All right, so as I said, no, I'm not supposed to turn around. As I said, there is clearly a problem here. So this is not the fully green dashboard that you would like. And this red bar over here means something is seriously damaged. And I'm going to quickly look and see. All right, so I've clicked on the clusters tab. This is my heat map view. One of my clusters has got a problem. I'm going to check and see which one that is. I should have given that a better name. It's the nightly 1 cluster. That's the production system. I care about that one. So what could possibly be wrong? Looks like one of the hosts is down. I could look and see that. But the thing that really worries me is this database tab. I've got a red mark in this database tab. So what's going on? What am I going to do here? That could really be bad. One of my databases could be down. So I'm going to click on this red one and see what it is. Well, it turns out it's the documents database, which in this particular case I care a whole lot about. And sure enough, if I scroll down, I've got alerts. It's telling me precisely what's going on, that this database is offline. And it's telling me to review some forests. So likely that's the cause of the problem. In fact, the cause of the problem is one of the hosts is down. And the way I set up the documents forest, there's no replication. So one of the hosts being down is actually taking that database offline. I don't particularly care about the documents database in this case. So let's see what this yellow one is. The yellow one is the trade store database. I do care about that one. So I am concerned about that. And I'm going to look and see what the story is there. It's only yellow. It's telling me to review some forests. So this is a database that's still functional, but something is clearly wrong. And what's wrong in this case is, again, one of the hosts is down because that's what I did to make it interesting. And I have replication set up for the trade store because that's a production database I care about. So some of the replica forests are gone. That's a state you want to address, but the application is still operational. If I hadn't wanted to show off the fancy heat map pop-ups, I could have gone over here and just clicked on this tab of alerts. One of the things Ops Director is doing is interrogating each of the clusters periodically and saying, what's your current health status? What's going on? What isn't going on? What's available? What's not available? And aggregating that together for you. So here we can see there are some various things that are offline, and there's a socket connection error, and that's the sort of thing that suggests a host problem. And then there's some at-risk things. So we're also doing some analysis and saying, if a forest is down, if a host is down, that means this database is offline. That means that any application servers that use that database are also potentially affected. And we're sort of doing the analysis for you and giving you a quick view of all the things that are at risk. And as I said, if I had more than 2 minutes left, I'd try and fix that problem and we'd see the whole thing go green, but I talked myself out of that level of crazy. So I'm just going to go through a few of these other tabs to give you a sense of what the Ops Director application gives you. Here is the Manage view. This is a view of all of the resources in your organization, all of the clusters, all of the hosts, all the databases. I can do searches in here. I can sort the tabs. I can click a button and save them out of CSV in order to import them into other applications. Analyze is like the monitoring history view, except across your entire enterprise. And since this demo has been running for a few hours, it's got a little bit of data, but it's running on my laptop, so it's not very exciting. But you can filter this and narrow this down and look at different clusters and compare things. The Support tab has an overview of all of the alerts that have come in. So another way of looking at this would have been to say, find me what's offline, and that would quickly tell me what's offline. I can search in here. I can analyze stuff. Event logs is all the logs on all of your hosts, on all of your clusters aggregated together. So you can very quickly find problems. You don't have to go digging around at which machine is which. And in this case, because I've got a lot of machines out there, maybe I don't want to send debug level logging to Ops Director because that's going to make for a very large database. So I've attuned it to say, just send me warnings. But that means I don't get context. So here's a warning I care about. And if I go over here and click on this link, I will then be taken to the context for that, 5 minutes before, 10 minutes after. And you can see exactly what's going on very quickly, find your problems. And I have 25 seconds left, so I'm going to stop there. That would be all green if I had fixed the problem, which I didn't, but there you go. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So one of the ways that people were managing large clusters before were using third-party tools. Can they continue to use those third-party tools along with our Ops Director?
Absolutely. We're not taking anything away from anybody. We're just providing some new functionality and some new capabilities to make it easier to manage MarkLogic.
And when you add a new node to your cluster, how long does it take to integrate it with Ops Director?
It's based on the same technology that's doing telemetry, so it's delivered almost immediately. As soon as a configuration change occurs, that's sent to Ops Director and reflected almost immediately.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
And just as a reminder, all of the presentations this week are being recorded, and you'll be receiving a note letting you know. So if you're getting tastes of things and you want to know more, please go to that on-demand site when you get that notice and feel free to not only review it yourself, but pass it on to a colleague or two. So remember when we were in school and we would always love to sort of stump the teacher by giving them those what-if scenarios? Well, what if we did this? Would it still be the same? Blah, blah, blah. So Alan Johnson, and you may recognize his voice if you've done any sort of training with MarkLogic, because he is that voice that does a lot of our training. Alan Johnson, senior courseware developer, finds that when he's training, he has to be able to roll up instances of all these different scenarios that folks in his class will come up with. And we heard Norm Walsh just mentioning that he was running this off a Docker instance. So you actually created a Docker instance that worked, a container that works on Docker for MarkLogic.
Correct.
Sounds good.
All right, so change is a constant. MarkLogic 9 has been released, and we learned about these new features of MarkLogic 9 through the early access versions. But MarkLogic 8 is still with us. So how can we easily switch between all of these versions for development, testing, and learning? VMs are good, but VMs on my laptop take up way too many resources. It takes too long to start up and shut down. A cluster of MarkLogic servers and VMs on my laptop, and it's doable, but it's not very practical. With MarkLogic and Docker, however, we can embrace these changes and minimize the disruption of our day-to-day workflow. It's a community-supported effort for development and QA purposes, of course. We can start and stop different MarkLogic versions in Docker containers. We can even investigate clustering features such as high availability. Now, one of the differences between Docker and VMs is that Docker is more lightweight. It doesn't virtualize the hardware. And also, it does not need a full OS in order to operate. Docker containers are self-contained units. So your MarkLogic content is inside the container. You delete the container, you delete your content. It may not be what's desired, but Docker has a way around that. With the Docker volume command, we can store content outside of the container so that if we delete the container, we can reuse our content in other containers. I'm going to change over to my Geek window, aka terminal, and show you these are some Docker images that I have on my laptop. These are real images. These are ones that I use every single day. They're MarkLogic 9 and MarkLogic 8 images. These are stored locally, but we could store them in public and private repositories. For example, your IT department could have a private repository of MarkLogic images that could be shared among the entire IT department. These images are created in what's called a Docker file. Think of a Docker file as kind of like a fancy Docker container makefile. All right, in this Docker file for MarkLogic 9, what I'm doing is I'm pulling a CentOS image. And this came right out of Docker's public repository. So it was put up there by CentOS, and I just pulled it down. The only thing I wanted to make sure, because CentOS Docker containers are usually a minimal install, I want to make sure that I have the MarkLogic dependencies, so I just pulled them down too. I copied the MarkLogic installer into the image. While I was at it, I also copied a shell script that's using MarkLogic's management REST API. And this is to provide some automation to initialize MarkLogic after installation and help me create an admin account. Now normally, run the installer. So run the installer from MarkLogic. So it's installed inside the container. Now, normally, these containers are walled gardens for networking purposes. So what I'm doing here is I'm exposing some MarkLogic ports outside of the container, such as MarkLogic's admin interface on port 8001. When the container is created, MarkLogic will start automatically. Normally, Docker containers will start, run a task, and then shut down. I don't want that to happen. So I'm doing a little trick here. I'm putting a tail on the null device to keep the container running all the time. Back to terminal. So I'm going to actually start a container. This happens to be a MarkLogic 8 container. And if I go to my browser, or you refresh here, we can hopefully see that. Indeed, we do have a MarkLogic 8 server that we're communicating with. I don't have to keep this container up all the time. I can get rid of it at any time. I can delete it if I want. But what's convenient for me is to be able to stop the container, which stops all the processes running in that. It's not taking up memory. It's not taking up any CPUs. It's still taking up storage, but that's okay. And then start another container. For instance, maybe one on MarkLogic 9. And then I can easily flip over and begin working in MarkLogic 9. And I'll just refresh the browser here. And we can see, indeed, I am talking to a MarkLogic 9 server right now. Now, aside from doing this, this is all great stuff. I like it a lot. But what if we could do one thing? So what if we could do this amplified? Well, we could have multiple MarkLogic containers all talking to each other. And Docker does have a facility for doing that. It's called Docker Compose. With Docker Compose, we can have multiple MarkLogic containers started up and communicating with each other as a cluster. To do this, Docker Compose uses what's called a YAML file. This YAML file creates containers for us and also opens up the networking between them, gets them talking to each other. And then, again, switch over to my browser real quick, a quick refresh. You can see I'm still definitely talking to a MarkLogic 9 server. But not only do I have one MarkLogic 9 server, I have a cluster of 3 MarkLogic servers, all communicating with each other. So with Docker, we can actually help out and better manage our changes in our SDLC processes and also stay informed of new and upcoming MarkLogic features. If you'd like to learn more about this, feel free to go to developer.marklogic.com. Take a look at our blog section. We have some great articles in there on this.
Congratulations, you did it. So how many here are developing on MarkLogic? Raise your hand. If back at the the login booth, boy, am I, the check-in, there's a little tag there that says developer community. You're all part of the developer community. Developer community is very active. Alan is part of it. He's the one that wrote the container to run MarkLogic on Docker. If you're don't have that little tag, you should run and get it. Talk to Dave Castle, the community leader, and find out more. This is great for testing, in addition to training, testing new environments, and so on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So it was a real lifesaver for the EA versions. Really.
Thanks so much. So we've been talking about, the theme of MarkLogic 9 is really about integrating all this great data, right, all this valuable data, but we don't want to just hoard it and secure it. We want to be able to use it and find the value in it. Up next is Jim Clark. He's Senior Director of Product Management with MarkLogic, talking about all the different ways you might go about viewing that data.
Excuse me. Thank you, Diane. Yes, we want to be able to let customers liberate their data and make it actionable. When I was thinking about putting together this presentation, I was looking for inspiration. How many people have seen Hamilton in the audience? A few people have. I took my daughter last week to see Hamilton. She's 11 years old, and it was under the auspices of you have to stop singing those songs at home all day long. I think it was kind of a natural progression from Frozen to Hamilton, which was kind of abrupt if anyone has heard the soundtrack to Hamilton. So we were driving home after the show, and it's really remarkable, and I was thinking out loud, which I have a tendency to do, and I'm thinking, maybe I can sort of incorporate a little Hamilton into my lightning talk. And I look in the rearview mirror, and my 11-year-old's in the back seat, and she shakes her head, and she says, "Dad, don't embarrass the family." So apparently I've done that on occasion. So we'll have to defer Hamilton, but it was a pretty remarkable performance. Pete Avon, you're doing this presentation in London. Maybe I'll throw the gauntlet to you on that. So I'm going to talk about BI and reporting with MarkLogic. Since I am a MarkLogic user, I know my data is managed and organized in a highly secure environment. And one of the things that I want to be able to do is take action on that. One of the popular ways of doing that is with BI and reporting. Along with just being able to access that data, I want to be able to ask different types of questions of that data, whether I'm an analyst or I'm an executive. For example, what were my sales results for last quarter? What are my sales results right now? What are my projected sales results for the next fiscal year? Or maybe I just want to look for new insights into the data to help drive my business forward. Today's BI solutions are a popular way of doing that. And how many people in the audience are using or have used BI tools? Excel's up there. That's considered a BI tool. So if you have a job that doesn't require you to use Excel, I'd like to talk to you because it sounds pretty compelling. But the point of this slide is there are a lot of choices, and even within these choices, there's options. I'm going to take you through 3 different scenarios that we've seen our customers use today, and then maybe offer you some alternatives with some of the traditional BI tools. I'm going to cover some custom apps, some native NoSQL players that we've been working with, and then I'll conclude with the traditional BI players, Power BI, MicroStrategy, Tableau. So first, custom apps. MarkLogic offers server-side programming languages that allows you to build the queries close to the data. It provides a rich client interface, client APIs, excuse me. So you're able to pull the rich data out into your applications. These are some examples of some applications that people have written directly on top of MarkLogic. It's a very fluid and flexible way to liberate your data and provide really good information. You can do filtering, you can do facets, you can see some geo objects in there, or you can combine all 3. So we see a lot of our customers going directly to MarkLogic and doing that. One thing that we talked about briefly yesterday in MarkLogic 9 is the Optic API. The Optic API is a way, a standard query interface layer that allows you to do joins and aggregates and group bys on top of the data. Would recommend taking a look at that if you're thinking about building custom applications for analytics or business intelligence. There was a session yesterday with more information. If you missed it, you can look at the recording. Very cool feature. The second area is the native BI tools, native NoSQL BI tools. So we work with two partners in particular, NOE, formerly Cloud9 Analytics, as well as Slam Data, and they've built native connectors into MarkLogic. If you go to their websites, you can download those connectors. You can also see demos of their tool on top of MarkLogic. They're able to take the rich data sets from MarkLogic, and as you can see here with some of the screenshots, publish them out for end users. The third area is the traditional BI tools. And even within the traditional BI tools, there's different ways to connect. A lot of the larger BI tool vendors offer different alternatives. I'm going to quickly walk through those three right now. The first is a web data connector, and you can write a JavaScript and publish it out to REST. And you can choose to either have real-time results or extract results, and it will drop it into the BI tool, and your analyst or end user is able to manipulate that data and publish reporting. It's pretty efficient and powerful. We see some of our customers moving in that direction, and what we also see is that BI vendors are spending more time in investing in this. I think they start to see that as a viable alternative to ODBC. The second is what they call the data extraction. Let's say you have a full year of sales reports that you want to run. Hopefully that's a lot of data because you're very successful. Being able to use the data extract, which is basically pulling the data out of, in this case, MarkLogic, dumping it into an extract file, and then allowing the BI tool to be able to publish it, is an effective way. However, whenever you need to refresh that data, you need to re-pull the extract in. So it's largely based on the use case. We're seeing a lot of our customers moving in this direction. There's not quite the need for that live data connection that we've seen as much in the past. The third one is the one that we're probably most familiar with, and that's the ODBC connection. The ODBC offers you that live connection where you can toggle back and forth between live and extract. But if people need to see what's in their BI tool and have it reflective of what's in the database at the same time, the ODBC is the way to do that. One last scenario I'm going to show you is combining the custom apps with SQL. So let's say you have a pretty heavy SQL shop, you've built a custom app and you want to leverage your ODBC connection. You can do that as well. One suggestion here is another feature in MarkLogic 9 called template-driven extraction. You can write these templates in XML or JSON format. There's no copying. The TDE, the template-driven extraction, can be used with all the scenarios that I articulated previous as well. So it's just not for the ODBC setup. So just in summary, I covered three different types of BI applications and tools. First was the custom. The second was the native NoSQL. And the third was a traditional BI with three different choices. That's it.
That was good. 2 seconds to spare.
Yeah.
And you got the Hamilton in there, too.
And my daughter texted me last night and she said, "Dad, make good choices." Actually, she snapped me. They don't text. It's Snap or Insta.
I know. It's
yeah.
a problem. So one of the things working with a multi-model database is that you keep the structure, no matter the shape of the data going in. You're keeping the structure of the data, that hierarchy. Some of the traditional tools out there will strip away that hierarchy. They flatten it. Talk about that a little bit and how they make a difference.
Yeah, I think the reason I showed the screenshots of the custom apps is when people write directly into MarkLogic, they're able to keep the affinity of the objects that are in there, and it's much richer. The traditional BI tools tend to smash things into the rows and columns, and so you lose that fidelity or that richness that you want. One thing I will add is we have made a lot of changes to MarkLogic 9 to help support this area. We have a lot of people focused on it. As customers, we'd love to see your use cases, what tools you're using, what's your setup, what queries you're running, and with redaction in MarkLogic 9, you could actually share some of the content with us. It's really interesting for us to understand how this is all being deployed in the wild, and we're learning a lot every month with this.
So I think I heard a call to influence the roadmap. So
Yes.
Jim Clark, seek him
Particularly in
out
this
in
area.
the hallway. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that concludes the lightning talk portion. We had 4 winners, for presentation, 4 winners. It's not easy to get up here in front of a large crowd and have that clock staring at you, telling you you're about to get that crazy sound. So final hand for our presenters.